Good morning. Um, Last night I had an experience I hadn't had for a while because of the pandemic. I read some of my own work in public at one of my favorite venues, KGB Bar, um, in the East Village on East 4th Street, near my old stomping ground of New York Theater Workshop and across from La Mama. Walking over there, I had a great feeling of returning, like, oh wow, this is what life used to be. It was kind of a wonderful thing. Anyway, that's not what this is about. Okay, one of the things I read was an excerpt from my memoir, and there was a paragraph um, in that piece about well, I'm not going to say what it was about. I'll read you the paragraph. But first, I want to read you. I sent the paragraph to a friend who put the paragraph into Chat GPT and asked it to summarize. So I'm going to read you Chat GPT's version of my paragraph, and then I will read you my paragraph because I want to make a point about the difference between a human being and a bot. So here is Chat GPT, and it's a summary. Again, it's a summary of what I of what I wrote in the paragraph. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. At 15, the speaker tells a lie, seemingly small, but only later realizes it was the beginning of a pattern. Over the decades, they became skilled at tailoring themselves to the desires and egos of their lovers, especially men who wanted flattery more than genuine intimacy. What started as harmless performances, little lies, or generous acts meant to please, became second nature. Their own desire eventually rooted itself in the pleasure of others, and the cost was authenticity. The reflection ends with a reckoning. The very lies they told to appease others have a way of returning, like boomerangs, to pierce their own heart. Okay. Um, so it's summarizing what's in this text, which is in the first person because it's a memoir. So now I'm going to read the actual paragraph. I wonder now whether the lie might not have spilled out of me quite so easily had I been able to see then, at age 15, just how many of the things I'd eventually hear myself saying to future lovers in my 20s, 30s, even 40s would also be untrue, or if not complete fabrications, still containing within them some kernel of self denial. I couldn't possibly know then just how adept, how comfortable I'd become with the necessary self denials that come from sussing out the ego needs of whoever I was betting. I became a master storyteller, performer, and sexual chameleon. For so many of the men I would bed preferred their lovers to be admirers, flatterers, cheerleaders, rather than actual partners on equal footing. And I eventually understood my own libido to emerge directly from the fertile ground of my partner's pleasure. Tiny acts of benign generosity, tiny lies or half truths, offered casually and frequently to soothe and pump the egos of others. I was too sure of myself and too unschooled in the ways of the heart to have possibly imagined that these things I'd said in passing, sometimes barely audible, but always designed to flatter, that these lies might fly through the world like a boomerang, eventually finding their way right back into the heart of me. Okay, now, First of all, I want to point out the last line, that these lies might fly through the world like a boomerang, eventually finding their way right back into the heart of me. Uh, I like that line as written, and I don't much like what Chat GPT makes of it, because get a load of this. The reflection ends with a reckoning. The very lies they told to appease others have a way of returning like boomerangs to pierce their own heart. Ugh. This reminds me of a piece I once wrote for Condé Nast Traveler about my visit to Cannes, to the Cannes Film Festival, and to the town of Cannes. And at the very end of the piece, I looked at a body of water, a lake, and I said in the piece, and a rainbow danced across the lake. And a very well-meaning, a very well-meaning copy editor, who shall remain nameless, returned the piece to me with one word inserted, where I had written, a rainbow danced across the lake. This copy editor insisted on inserting the word trout after rainbow. A rainbow trout danced across the lake. Now, why did she want to do this? Because, Roland, rainbows don't dance. And therein lies, I think, the problem. The ways in which ChatGPT, like a copy editor with blinders on, will never really understand what it is for one human to share their experience in words for another human to absorb and appreciate. What do you think?